Online Voices and the 616 Company presents The Book of the Unguided, Canto III, by Darren William Pearce, based on an original story by Richard Sjunnesson, narrated by Behr. Act 3. Give Back to Earth. I couldn't help but stare when I saw her. This woman, Gaia, she looked so familiar. I couldn't help myself from looking at her. I upset my nephew, but deep down I knew it just could not be. It must have been evolution being cruel, playing a trick of physical reincarnation. Still, it was impossible to deny that this woman resembled, albeit perfectly, a person of my ancient memory, Abigail. She'd be almost as old as Eve and the world itself by now, of course. I was old. I knew all the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve to be long gone. All barring my nephew, of course, who was a son of Eve from a more recent time, the only connection to that era I have now, since all the others have been dead for thousands and thousands of years. Abigail's fate was a cruel one indeed. The daughter who Adam doted upon and loved more than his own wife. You see, when Eve destroyed Adam with a bow, death's sting, she turned all her anger and boundless rage toward her own daughter, Abigail. Eve, still possessing arrows laced with the poison of Apophis, broke a single splinter from the venomous wood and shoved it into the brain of her daughter. The splinter did not kill her. It did something worse. It erased her memory, and the potent poison continued to reset her mind on a regular basis until what I might have expected to be her dying days. She was sent off into the world to face her fate like a mad woman, entirely neglected by her mother. It is a horrible story, and there is no comfort knowing the outcome. Now, with the appearance of this Gaia character, who bears the same visage and countenance as Abigail, well, I kept my own counsel and kept my beliefs to myself. I knew it was too absurd to be true, mere coincidence only. Plus, my nephew seemed to really like her, and I did not want to put an arrow into that potential budding relationship. So what happened after the tale of Gaia and the red-eyed monster? My nephew, Gaia, Judgment, the captain, and myself kept ourselves very busy in the throne room. I ordered some men to salvage the scraps of the deactivated assassins for examination. Various strategies were crafted in the intervening time, which eventually formulated and evolved into a plan in how we would be able to get to this lieutenant of Syndicaya. The information we had at hand was that their target was undeniably Gaia, for whatever reason, since she was the only reported assault so far. I noted that the machines that were sent for the woman were poorly constructed, mere trinkets compared to the monsters that we had faced during the war. They were made of patchwork components, roughly slapped together and a result of sloppy engineering overlaid on a poor framework and flawed designs. This pointed to a fact: the enemy did not have the resources, the right tools, or the skill to reach his ultimate goal. This was a point in our favor, since it meant our opposition wouldn't be as deadly as the red-eyed killer of the past. We'd likely face substandard foes, and ones that were still under development. I had to poke my good nephew a few times. He lost focus. I don't blame him. He was soaring too close to the sun at times. And when the sun burns as brightly as Gaia, it was easy to get a little singed. He was often distracted at the many meetings, and I had to remind him time and time again to maintain his focus. Still, it was good to see him so animated. Soon, though, we had a so-called master plan. We all had our roles to play in this coming scenario. Gaia would play bait. My nephew, the king, did not approve of this, but he saw reason later on that it was the only viable option. Gaia, of course, was all for this course of action. We would set up an ambush right here in Zion, hoping for the lieutenant to finally take matters into his own hands and walk right into our trap. At least, that's what we hoped. We went on some recon trips to the market square, where Seth first met Gaia to set up the trap, to ensure that it was the right spot and prepare for the plan. There were many such trips, and once again my nephew drowned in Gaia's eyes, and I had to ensure he understood the stakes. Soon the night of our plan came to be. I entered the chambers of my nephew and took with me an old scroll. I found the lad looking once more with a sad stare into the great mirror, as he often did when he spent any amount of time in that chamber. Gaia was there, which was perhaps encouraging, since they did spend a lot of time together. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, performing maintenance of her weapons. My nephew looked at me, and I handed him the scroll. What was on it? Ah, the scroll, dear reader, was an oath of fealty made by his father and me to Zion so long ago. I wanted to give my nephew this scroll as insurance. Should something happen to this old soldier and friend, he would have the weight of those words and the embrace they offered. He would have to enforce these oaths and words upon my passing. He accepted, sighed, and I saw him burdened by the heavy weight of what we'd written. Silently, he walked over to the stand, took the replica of Angel Cleaver and joined me. As he passed by, I whispered a few words that he didn't quite catch, then smiled. Together we formed our squad, set off and left the royal quarters to vanish into the night. The first night passed without event. We all took our positions and waited patiently. Nothing disturbed the stillness of the market square. Some citizens passed through now and then, mostly hurrying as the night drew on. There was no sign of our enemy, the invaders. The dawn came, and we were stiff from waiting, so we withdrew to a better vantage point and watched the daily life of the market square happen around us. People did their business, shopped, talked, caroused, and went about their routines without a care in the world. Dusk of the second day dawned, and it was at this point things began to heat up. Gaia drew the attention of 3 robotic sentries approaching her, where she stood all alone at the very center of the square. These were lackeys, not our main target, so I kept a watchful eye on them but ignored them for the most part. Seth, on the other hand, gritted his teeth and gripped Angel Cleaver tightly. I put my hand on his shoulder and explained that Gaia could handle it. His shoulders drooped and I smiled. Your time will come. Gaia exploded into action as they got closer. She dispatched 2 of the machines with her remarkable gun-slinging skill, smoking holes in their heads. The third got a little too close, and I saw a blade slice into Gaia, splattering her blood upon the pavement beneath her feet. She jumped back and clutched her side with a wince and a growl deep in her throat. Seth bolted out of our hiding place and ran toward Gaia with fury in his eyes. He leapt at the machine, but the woman calmly shot that one as well and sent a bullet through its left optic, felling the monster in a single shot. My nephew helped Gaia stand and tended to her wound. He shot me annoyed glances, and I simply thought the machines came close to succeeding. Perhaps that's what Gaia wanted, to use her wound to smoke the commander out from his hiding place. We did not have to wait long. Another day and another night passed. We did not leave our hideout or move our position. And then, suddenly after we grew tired of more waiting, a huge robotic being slid past the king and me, where we hid. We could hear the creature's respiration as it choked breaths back and forth mechanically. Its breathing was labored as it walked past us toward Gaia. This was the creature that I remembered from the past, from the front line of Zion, the killer who harvested hearts. This robotic servant of Syndicea, how did it even still exist? And how did it have a will and a consciousness of its own, even after its creator's death? There was no time to ponder this, for this fight would be hard indeed, a very trying battle. Gaia did not waste time. She leveled both guns and they spat death toward the monster. It met her fire with a booming mechanical voice that proclaimed loudly, "The end is here." That was all it took to start the fight. The captain and Judgment leapt out of hiding, and I saw it all transpire. Judgment landed on the creature's back and began to try to pry the monster's head from its shoulders. The red-eyed, human-faced behemoth was too strong for Judgment. With a shrug of its shoulders, a powerful motion cast the Guardian off onto the ground, where he rolled violently for quite a distance. Gaia's bullets did nothing. They ricocheted from the robust mechanical body and pinged off in all directions, causing some collateral damage to the square. This was no mere lackey. This was a machine that had been designed to Syndicea's specifications and made from exquisite materials. A perfect killing machine, outlined in the dark of the night like an angel of death. We had the numbers, but this monster had the strength and construction to potentially defeat us. I hoped my plan worked. I hoped that my nephew would not shirk his responsibility. The captain took his staff and opened a rift to another world. As soon as this rift opened, it began pouring dark energy all around that struck the monster like a lance of power. Some of its human skin burnt off and revealed yet more perfect machinery behind the fleshy covering.
This is all futile. Your end is assured.
The red-eyed lieutenant informed us with a mechanical cackle and caught the captain's staff. In a single fluid motion, he snapped it in two, and then backhanded the captain across the square. The captain's impact broke the wall as he sailed through it, vanishing into the building beyond and crashing into the structure. Red-Eye then turned his focus toward Gaia. With a snap of his hand, he caught her by the throat and began squeezing her and holding her upward. His other hand reached forward, sharp fingers like knives in the dark, ready to pluck out her heart. My nephew's eyes grew and burned like fire. This was the moment I had hoped for. Still proving to be a wily old fox and a cunning old fellow, I had whispered words of power into Angel Cleaver. I prayed that the lad could control what I had done. Seth spread his wings wide, flew into a rage, and channeled the power like his father. I was proud of him in that moment. He raised Angel Cleaver high above him in a mighty leap and brought it down in a single blow that echoed the might of 1,000 kings. Red-Eye was sliced in two, split from head to navel. The magic of the axe burned brightly as the powerful psalm resonated in the darkness. powerful shockwave knocked everyone to the ground. The monster's grip on Gaia was released, and I picked myself up from the floor. I saw the king looking shocked. He did not know that I whispered a song or two of power into that weapon before we left. Insurance is a wonderful thing. I don't think Seth was ready for the full potential and power of full weapon enchantments just yet. But it never hurts to ensure that you have a backup reserve of energy when you might need it. I could always limit the weapon's power once this was all said and done. Still, I allowed myself to feel a great deal of pride for the boy. The king embraced Gaia to check to see if she was all right. Their embrace suddenly grew intimate as Seth, perhaps emboldened by his victory, bent forward and kissed her. She did not push him away, and she met his passion with her own. I was somewhat uneasy observing this. However, I quickly focused my attention on Captain in Judgment, who was still noticeably rattled from the fight, yet looked on with absolute delight at the turn of events. We heard Red Eye wail as his digital voice ensured us that we would never be safe again. Then it spiraled into more of a rasp. Finally, as the being entered deactivation and destruction, it fell silent. The stolen human eyes gleamed red one last time. Then no more. We wasted no time extracting the data from the lieutenant to ensure we had not missed a vital clue regarding this troubling new development. While the king and Gaia busied themselves with each other, others checked the market square to ensure there were no more hidden assailants or surprises. I, however, turned myself to the task of data extraction. I knew how tricky this was, and I could not do it. So I took steps to bring in people who could. Thanks to our earlier census, we tracked down the descendants of the past robot engineers. And although this task was a forbidden one, we made allowances and assured them there would be no repercussions for what they were about to do. Hack into the mind of a monster. They used their somewhat suspicious knowledge to accomplish this, using tools and techniques that were outlawed. Even their equipment was considered heretical. Yet they did it, and they were able to breach the secure shell and divulge the innermost secrets of the lieutenant. What did we find? More than we bargained for. This machine had been active in the one place we didn't think to look. The one place right under our noses that we would not expect. Hellfrost. It plotted its return, revenge, and more from this inhospitable place. It single-handedly constructed sentries and servants from all available materials, bent them to its will, and sent them off under orders. Just before the great mission, Emanate and Eradicate, which ultimately led to Synthesire's inevitable end, the machine god made plans. The entity foresaw its own destruction and acted to counter this. It copied pieces of its mind to its most trusted servant, the Red-Eyed Killer. With this came the overwhelming desire to secure its dominion and the burning hatred of the human race. When Synthesize fell, the lieutenant was not immediately decommissioned like the other robotic troops. Part of the machine god lived on in this construct. It began to formulate and construct plans. It moved away from battle, sheltered in Hellfrost, and constructed plans for revenge. Red Eye had been patient and willing to wait upon vengeance until this day. During our discovery, we also learned of another secret, another shock for us all, Project Gaia. Let me explain as much as I can understand. for even an immortal such as me could scarcely believe this. Gaia is the long-lost soul of the world. You see, during the machine's experiment on the woman, which she had told us nothing about, it found out that Gaia was fundamentally different from other human beings. They found out that she was interlinked and entwined with all the building blocks of the world. She was a living, human-like network to its very essence. So, rather than using her as spare parts to fuel the machine of war against the human race, they wanted to salvage her soul and bring it into Sindasaya. This would have served as a final protection from the machine god, the ultimate shield. Imagine it, if the machine god had Gaia's soul, he would be linked to all things. Should he fall, so too would the world and all would be destroyed. It would be the ultimate firewall against the destruction of the machine god. It would make any aggressors against Sindasaya think twice before they unleashed their plans against him. You see, Sindasaya did not want to destroy the world. He wanted to destroy all the humans, eradicate their lives, so that he could create a machine society to replace it. He wanted to mirror the Seraphim's plans for a perfect society in many ways, one without the flaws that make humans so very interesting. As an aside, I would prefer the world's end over such a thing. Fortunately for us all, they were never able to extract Gaia's soul or make any kind of successful transfer to the machine god. Her soul was anchored too hard in her, for she was the anchor stone of the world, flowing through every particle of us all, completely unaware that this was her function in the grand tapestry. In all our old tales, we could only speculate upon the true nature of the soul, passed down from the tree of life onwards to Adam, and then here it was, found intact in this remarkable young woman. How an answer to such an ancient riddle finally surfaced is one that I find utterly fascinating and intriguing. Red Eye's mission then was simple. It was the machine god's grand backup plan. He set out to eliminate Gaia and ensure that the world would indeed end. This machine differed from his master. Pure hatred for humanity guided it at every step of the way. It had no great vision or self-preservation at all, just the final solution: kill everyone, including itself. There were some files that were deeply encrypted, and we could not extract them. We really couldn't get at that data. But I suppose some secrets are left for others to deal with. We had what we needed, so we left the other data alone for now. We had the answers we sought to a puzzle or two that had eluded us for so long. I sought out Gaia one day and looked at her long and hard. I could not help myself. I asked a simple question. Abigail, is it really you?